the international community have the responsibility to protect and prevent victims of genocide, or is state sovereignty more important? To answer this question, we have to identify the legal system in the international community. And unfortunately, and I'm sorry for being pessimistic, my apologies, at the moment, political realism has influenced the law in a certain way where moral laws and moral values in international law are neglected. And this is because of state sovereignty. State sovereignty at the moment is more important than international law and universal values. So we, as activists, as young people, have the duty to prevent this system and to basically shift from a state of force where we respect sovereignty and coercion to a state of morality where human rights and international law governs. And before I start my argument, thank you, Niamet, for organizing this, because a conference about genocide prevention is the first step to prevent other atrocities and international crimes. So thank you, Niamet. You are my role model, you are my aunt, and I really appreciate you organizing this conference because it's very, very important that you empower young people to contribute to a social movement of moving towards a state of morality. Is this correct, or do I? Oh, alright, perfect. So, here's my first slide. We have to accept a fundamental reality, and this is that the fundamental principles of human rights are universal values. Patrick and I are different. We have different nationalities, we have different ethnicities, we have different stories, and that's amazing. We should embrace those differences. But as a matter of fact, Patrick and I want to live in peace. We want to live in a clean environment. We want to be free from coercion. So these values are universal values that belong to the human race. Because no race or no ethnicity is superior to another ethnicity or race. All human beings are born equally and they should die equally. And if this does not, and if this is prevented, then there is something wrong with our system. To prevent genocide, we need to institutionalize democracy in our system. And the three key elements of a democracy are over here. Article 19, 20, and 21 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Article 19 says that every single person, every one of you, has the right to freedom and opinion of expression. It is your right to express yourselves. Because you're born free and you have the right to express your own opinion. And if you're denied the right to express your own opinion, then what's the point of life? Article 20.1 says that everybody has the right to freedom of peaceful assembly and association. So this conference is an example of how we young people, how feminist activists have gathered together to counter the status quo, to counter this international system that favors state sovereignty. So this is an example of our human rights being implemented, which is amazing. Article 21.3, and I'm a law student. I'm still second year. I'm still 20, so I don't have experience, but I know the law, so I can give you guys the law. Article 21.3 says that the government should be elected based on the people. So you, the people, must elect your government. And if your government denies your right to free and fair elections, then that government is worthy of falling down. So if your government oppresses you, fight back against them, because this is your human right. That if you believe in God, God has given you. And if you don't believe in God, which is perfectly fine, because people have different beliefs, you're still equal to every single person. So authority should not oppress you. My second debate is the peace versus justice debate, and the case of al-Bashir. So, the UN Security Council Resolution 1593 noticed the situation in Darfur and referred the situation to the Office of the Prosecutor in The Hague of the International Criminal Court. And they investigated the situation, and they said that they charged al-Bashir with an arrest warrant for 5 counts of crimes against humanity, 2 counts of war crimes, and yes, 3 counts of genocides. In 2019, this year, in August, the Sudanese court charged al-Bashir with corruption. But he was not charged with the genocide he committed against the people of Darfur. And I refer to Article 1 of the Genocide Convention, which says that the international community has the responsibility to prevent and punish the crime of genocide. And this is customary international law, and no one is above the law. My professor always says, in Belgium, he says, Cavard, as a matter of fact, he is French speaking, so he has this very nice accent. As a matter of fact, no one is above the law. But unfortunately, our international system is neglecting the law. So, if we do not punish al-Bashir for the atrocities he has committed, we also don't achieve sustainable peace. And my argument is no. Al-Bashir should be charged for genocide. Because if you do not punish al-Bashir for the crime of genocide, then the ideology of the Janjaweed militia is likely to occur again. And it is occurring at the moment, as certain professors and people that are smarter than me, I'm still second-year law student, so people that know more than me have mentioned yesterday. And the third one is feminist jurisprudence. And I want to mention one thing. Throughout history, it has been us men that have made the law. And it hasn't really worked out, as you can see. Genocides, atrocities, rape and sexual violence, and yes, men are also victims of sexual violence, but 99.9% of the times it is men that rape, it is men that commit genocide and atrocities. So men are a problem, and I'm sorry for saying this, but we are a very big problem to the international community. So I had the privilege of meeting with Ms. Doreen Lonte, who is the coordinator of a movement which is called Call It What It Is. And her organization is based in The Hague in the Netherlands. And she's working on it. This is her idea, this is not my idea. I'm not, I don't want to plagiarize anything from anyone. And she says that Article 5 of the Rome Statute defines 4 international crimes. The crime of genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and crimes of aggression. And this amazing woman, Doreen, says that we should have another crime in the Rome Statute, and we should have point E, which says that sexual violence should be a separate international crime, because the law does not protect women. So we should update the law. We should have a reform in our legal system to protect women from sexual assault. Guys, please note this down. Contact Niamet. Please invite Doreen to this conference next year. Please save her contacts. I will keep it on the slides for a minute so you guys can take pictures of it and write it down, because she is amazing. She doesn't know me very well. She probably forgot about me, but I remember her very, very well. Can I move on? Yes? Perfect. And my final argument is the right to self-determination of a minority. And I'm going to give you all the legal implications, because the right to self-determination, the right to freedom from coercion, is a fundamental human right. And no authority has the right to coerce a minority. No authority. And the Janjaweed militia in Sudan, al-Bashir in Sudan, are genocidaires, and they should respect the right to self-determination of Darfur. And in Myanmar, the military regime in Myanmar should respect the right to self-determination of the Rohingya people that live in Rakhine State. In Iraq, where I am from, the Iraqi authority, the Turkish authority, the Syrian authority, and the Iranian authority must respect our right to self-determination. Because I'm not Iraqi, I am not Turkish, I'm not Iranian, I'm not Syrian, I am Kurdish from Kurdistan. And I have the right to live in the United States. I refer to the East Timor case of 1995, where the International Court of Justice declared the right of self-determination to be respected by all states as a fundamental principle of international law. Article 1.1 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights says that all people have the right to self-determination. This is a fundamental human right. Article 55 of the UN Charter says that the international Organization for Economic and Social Development has the goal to advocate for self-determination, and the right to self-determination is also mentioned in Article 1.2 of the UN Charter. And this has already happened. The process of colonization has finished, almost, so we are ignoring this thing. But as a matter of fact, this should still apply today. And I'm going to quote my law professor in Belgium, Professor Kogan. He's from Israel, like he's from Belgium, but he has grown up in Israel as well, and he's a genius. Just like Professor Stanton, who unfortunately isn't here. He says that if two principles are met, a nation can determine its own future. The first one is that an authority of a majority group coerces a minority group. If the majority in a country coerces a minority, then that minority has the fundamental human right, this is a collective human right, to determine its own future. The second situation is where you have a referendum to declare independence from a coercive state, like the Kurds did in Iraq in 2017, which my mom voted for yes. I couldn't vote yet because I was underage at the moment, so unfortunately. And unfortunately, because of state sovereignty, this collective human right has been neglected. So, my argument stops here, but I want to have a conclusion. And yes, the struggle for freedom is very difficult. Yes, we are restricted because state sovereignty is more important, unfortunately. But I'm very, very optimistic that we, the people like Niamet, have contributed to a mass movement where the rule of law and democracy and human rights governs. And let me finish by saying this. The struggle for freedom and democracy is always victorious and will be victorious. And about myself, I'm from Kurdistan. I've grown up there my entire life. And my friends used to tell me, God, why do you always talk about human rights? Just follow power, follow authority, follow the people who have power. So what, man? Just live comfortable for yourself. And the others, it's their own problem. And I say no. It's not their own problem. We should encourage one another. We should support each other. And then they say, okay, let's say you help out 2 or 3 people. You cannot change the entire world. And I say no. If I inspire or encourage a person to contribute to change, my mission is accomplished. Change starts with one person, one small movement, and I refer to the situation of Greta, who last year in the Swedish parliament was standing alone with one sign saying we need to counter the status quo of governments that contribute to climate change. And today, a 16-year-old girl who inspires me a lot is a leader of a mass movement to counter climate change. So young people can do it. One person can do it, and change is possible. So always stay optimistic. And once again, Niamet, you're my inspiration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kawar Mahmoud, for a very interesting presentation. And now, Patrick.
Yes.
So, start.
Thank you so much, Kawar. I think that was a great way to kick off this morning, to wake us all up.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Patrick Realisa. I'm the Vice Chair of the Peace and Security Committee for the UN Association here in Washington, D.C. On behalf of the UN Association, I'd like to personally thank the R4 Women Action Group for inviting me to speak and participating on this very important opening panel on millennial activism for genocide prevention, the promotion of human rights in the movement for positive change. I'm indeed very pleased to be returning. This is actually my 3rd time attending this conference, and every year it just gets better. Also want to give an advance thank you to my fellow panelists. I've already had the pleasure of meeting some of them yesterday and also reading their very accomplished biographies, and I think that's what we need. We need inspiring young leaders to take on the work, whether it's genocide in Darfur or anything else. So this morning we continue our conversation on women in genocide with a focus on the situation in Darfur. Just to quickly recap, yesterday we started out with an opportunity to learn about the current status of genocide around the globe through our opening panel which included key representatives such as Dr. Gregory Stanton of Genocide Watch. And then from there, we took a deeper dive into women's continued resilience in the face of genocide and mass atrocities by hearing from leaders and survivors alike. And then we also had a chance to hear for accountability on war crimes, for figures such as Ambassador Kelly Curry. And then we closed out yesterday afternoon exploring the innovative strategies for increased women's empowerment in the face of adversity. So just going back to my role at the UN Association, as I mentioned, I serve as Vice Chair for Peace and Security, so I'm actively tasked with developing programs that assist and create strong US-UN partnership. As you probably know, this administration is not exactly in favor of the UN's historical participation, especially from the US side. And so that makes my work that much more important. Some of the examples of the programs we've done in the past, just to give you an idea, we've done a program on the progress of the global goals at Georgetown University. We did an in-depth conversation, co-joint dialogue with No Lost Generation, which is a student-led organization committed to the solidarity of refugees. That was actually at American University. And we had the 2017-2018 US Youth Observer to the UN, Munir Halif. And basically, for those of you who aren't familiar, the UN Youth Observer is a young leader selected from the United States to represent the voices of the US at the UN. And then another program more recently that we did was with the Inter-American Dialogue in the Atlantic Council, where we talked about migration, governance, and sustainable development in Central America. So as a young leader in this field of work, I'm essentially tasked with developing programs that promote awareness and engagement, such as the issues happening in Darfur. And a lot of the base that I'm working with are young students and early professionals. Formerly, I was the head of our Sustainable Development Committee from 2016 to 2018, and I made the shift to Peace and Security last year when Ambassador Don Bless, who heads up our Peace and Security program, tapped me for that position, and has expanded my understanding of peace and security. I think when the Sustainable Development Goals were adopted, I became very instrumental in developing those programs, but I wasn't able to really focus on niche things such as peace and security. And I think it was great that Kawar talked about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I think the more that I spend, I've been in this position for about a year, how privileged we all are for us living here in the United States to be able to live out and carry these human rights with little to no. It's not a perfect country, it's not a perfect system, but for the most part, we don't have as much obstructions when you compare to other young people in places like Darfur. Ultimately, my sincere hope is that, by speaking here today, I can help inspire young people who are in the room, here at the table, in the audience, as well as those watching on Facebook. I know that we are streaming online. Ultimately, I believe that women and children are important and genocide must be addressed. Darfur needs our help, especially from young leaders. The world is changing. I think one of the things to take away from yesterday morning's kickoff panel discussion is that we are seeing a surge of movements being led by young people, which has been on a wide range of issues: climate change, immigration policy, the list goes on. And really, genocide should be no different. It's going to take more effort from everyone. I really attribute my success in my 20s to be because of the mentors that I've had from the change makers, the people who have paved the way for us, and now we owe it to the next generation, Generation Z, to kind of do the same thing. And I just want to point out again, Namat has been one of my key mentors for peace and security, and I can't thank you enough, Namat, for inviting me to come speak here and sharing my story. And you're always so supportive. So if we can give Namat another round of applause. And lastly, as I promised, I wanted to make the remarks very brief. I hope that we can all learn from each other. I understand, there are a couple of seasoned professionals here, who have decades of experience. I don't have that. But I do think that the young voice, the youth voice, has something to contribute. And so, on that note, I'm going to close my remarks and turn it over back to the moderator. Thanks so much.